Hey everybody, it's Matt here, Wrestling with Whiskey, back after a little bit of a hiatus. It was on the holidays, was in Europe, was doing all kinds of stuff. If you've been following my Instagram, you get to see a little bit of that. Today, keeping it simple, but also very fundamental if you're trying to expand your palate. You're trying to learn to pick out different tastes and identify different drinks and brands and things like that. And that's a classic blind tasting. Because a lot of these things, you see the bottle and it gives you an idea whether it's expensive or whether it's a famous brand, that it should be good or better than others. And a lot of the time, that's not the case. So, if you can taste and have no idea what you're drinking, let's just say the palate, the tongue never lies, right? The senses never lie. So, you can kind of see, I'm off here. I've got three samples here from my friend Anthony. I'd given him a few samples a couple weeks back, and he returned the favor. And he sent the answers to what they are in an email. So at the end of this, I'll be able to reveal what they are for myself for the first time, as well as for you. I'm very new to this still myself. So like I always claim on all these things, I'm a beginner too. I want you guys to be doing these kind of things with me so you can learn how to do them too. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot of profiles yet. Not by heart. I don't know what's Heaven Hill from Buffalo Trace, from a Jim Beam. I know certain things are supposed to be prominent, but like I'm not a guy who can sip something and go, oh, that's Dickel. You know what I mean? Or that's MGP. I'm working on it though. And that's what today's about. So, without further ado, skip the pleasantries. Let's get right into it, right? And here we have, okay, just make sure I put them in the right order. Sample number 1. I'm in the basement, so I don't have great natural light or anything. But the color is kind of light. It's got classic ambers in it and everything. But it's not super dark, so it may not be crazy aged. So on the nose, well, let's look at the legs real quick. So not a ton of legs going on it, but it's not moving a lot either. It's not dripping down in big old fat legs or anything. Nose has a lot of corn, which is a note that I've just started to pick up. Because it's corn stuff, because you always have corn in things, but you never really smell corn, if you think about it. You know what I mean? Unless you eat a lot of like cornbread or things like that. There's corn starch. There's kerneled corn, but even that, you don't really smell it. You're just kind of eating it with other kind of vegetables or something like that. So if you really think corn's a tough note to pick out. So if you're able to kind of get your hands on some dry corn or something like that, or some raw corn, it really helps. And I'm starting to pick that up a little bit. So definitely some corn, some fruit, some like dried fruit in there. A little bit of like bubblegum cotton candy-ish notes. Just very light on there. Yeah, a little bit of like candy. Not overpoweringly astringent, which is nice. The alcohol is not like punching you in the face. And just like a little bit of leather. I like to smell a lot because that's one thing I'm really getting enjoyment out of. Okay, let's take a taste. It's nice. Some of that sweetness. I'm gonna guess this is a wheater. Just from the softness, both on the nose and on the palate. There's a soft sweetness to it, with not a ton of rye spice coming out of it. Now that I've kind of coated my tongue and gotten used to the burn of the alcohol, let's take another sip. Not overly drying on the finish, which depending on what you like, it can be either good or bad. I don't mind it. Not super intense, or is it the same thing like I said in the nose? The alcohol doesn't hit you in the face, both either on the nose or the palate. But that little bit of that cotton candy kind of follows through. It's light and sweet. Reminds me a little bit of Weller Special Reserve. I'm not going to be so bold as to be going out and picking exact bottles of what I think these are because I'm still very new to this. But I am gonna guess it's a wheater because there's less of that rye spice, softer, subtle sweetness, and smells, and the nose is a lot like some of the Weller products and stuff that I've had. So I believe I'm gonna go on a limb and say this is a wheater. One more sip. Yeah. A little bit of leather and tobacco, but very, very subtle. Okay. One is a wheater. That's my guess. I don't know if it's true. We'll find out. Glass number 2. Take a look at this. As you can kind of see, it's a little bit darker than the last one. So it might be a little more age on this one. Again, it's people who are really good, have a great eye, can almost spot the age out of the color. But it can also be deceiving because most of the color for bourbon comes in the first stretch that it's in the barrel. I believe usually within the first 2 years, if not more. Well, that's where most of the color comes from. And then eventually, you can go through subtle hues as you get up through 4, 6, and 8 years and stuff. And then, I mean, as you go on and on and on, you're into the 18, 20 years, they can be very dark. But it depends on where the warehouse is, where the barrel is, how hot the summers are, how intensely it went in and out of the wood throughout all those summers and everything. That's what makes bourbon so cool. It's like literally every bottle, even if it's the same damn label, can be something different because the seasons, the location, everything affects the flavor of the whiskey. Let's give this a little swirl and take a look at some legs. Run. So, waiting. Okay, see some legs starting to form here. Small. Lots of little ones, not dripping too heavy. Ooh. This has got a very like cherry, vanilla, leather nose. Off the bat, this reminds me of a Russell's single barrel. It's got like warming kind of, again, just cherry, vanilla, caramel. Yeah, battery. Oh! Leather. There's definitely some leather in there. Not super spicy on the palate. And these have been in these glasses for a while, so that they may have been oxidized a little bit. Let's take a taste. The vanilla and everything follows through on the palate. I'm starting to see some more legs now. These are some fat legs. Makes me think there might be a little bit of age on this. It's a very coating mouthfeel, which is nice. Viscous. It's very full, very robust. Definitely not a thin bourbon, whatever it is. A lot of more baking spice on this one. So this one's definitely not a wheater. This one's definitely a rye, regular. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a high rye, because it's not overwhelmingly spicy, but it definitely has that spice going. I'm I'm thinking some type of turkey product. I'm thinking of Russell's, either a pick or a single barrel, possibly the 10-year, the standard 10-year on the shelf. I don't know how rare or common these are supposed to be either, so I don't know if this is a limited edition or not, but this is very nice, whatever it is. And my palate, I really like robust, full flavored things that are kind of thin and light, which can be very tasty to some. I prefer. That's why I like more barrel proofs and uncut things, because I love that feeling of almost like molasses on the taste, heavy. That's always been the flavors I've always been more into. Do one more taste. Mmm. Nice medium to long finish, spice coming through on it. Mm-hmm. And the creamy vanilla. It's a very hearty bourbon. Like that a lot. Just a little bit of like that leather in there too, which is actually very enjoyable. So, one is a wheater. Two, I'm gonna go out on a limb, and the closest thing that I've tasted to that is some kind of is a turkey, and a Russell's Reserve variation of some kind would be my guess. I'm really excited to see how way off I am. Actually, that's the fun part about this. Is like, it's not so much a game where you score points to be right. You just learn. That's the coolest part of it. You literally just learn. So even if I'm way off the base, I get to learn something. I go, oh, so that thing that I thought was Russell's, the next time I taste something, like, oh, remember, you thought it was Russell's, you thought it was turkey, you thought it was that kind of profile, but it could be confusing because you might confuse it with XYZ. So always just pay attention to what you're tasting, what you're figuring out, and things like that. Last but not least, from the Anthony Trio of Samples, our final one. Now this one color is kind of close to the other one, but this is probably the darkest one yet. Look at that. That has got some beautiful dark caramels on the color. This has got to be pretty decently aged, or it might be finished too. It could be finished in a secondary barrel that adds some more of that color. I'm really excited about this. Actually, let's whip that up just a little bit. So some people hate swirling. I don't. I like to use it to see the legs. But before you sniff it, make sure you give us a chance to calm down, because you're just going to waft a lot of alcohol if it's still swirling in there. I'm already starting to see some pretty thick legs on this one, which is nice. Which again leads me to believe there's a little bit more age on here than maybe the other two. Whoa, hello. I don't know if this is a bourbon. Right off the bat. So I'm going to guess right off the nose, this has got to be an American malt. Because it's not like Scotch, but it definitely has the malted barley kind of nose that Scotch does. But it's sweet. It's like a tart cherry. Oh God, yeah, that's like a cherry malt bomb, as they say, right? Wow, it's very interesting. I don't know if it's my thing, because I'm still having trouble with malted whiskeys. They just taste. I'm so used to the bourbon profile that the malt profile is, and the malt whiskey is it's a little bit off to me. I'm very excited to taste this, though, just out of curiosity. All right, bottoms up here. Cheers, Anthony. Thank you for all these wonderful samples. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that is definitely malt whiskey of some type. Whether it's a pure malt or if it's some kind of experimental. Wow. So it's definitely some kind of Scotch. Finished in a wine barrel because there's grapey sweetness on it. There is spice, so maybe it's a Scotch, which often use wine barrels. The Scotch, not a ton of Scotches use virgin barrels anyway. So maybe it was Scotch made in a wine barrel, but then finished in a bourbon barrel, or vice versa, because it's got this. Maybe it would finish in rye barrels because it's got this spice that very nice. It's also a lot darker than Scotches are. Unless that's a finished rye. So I'm like, I have yet to crack my midwinters. So I have never had that yet. And I've been saving it for Christmas time. It could be. I'm smelling malt though. Ooh, but that's spice. That's rye spice. I'm thinking that's midwinter. Because I keep hearing about how sweet and like fruitcake it is. And that's very fruity. But it's also dark and rich. And it would make sense because the Midwinter's Night Dram, as if I have it right here, is a blend of straight rye whiskeys finished in French oak port barrels. And that French oak is known to give it a really nice spice to it. And the port offers that color and that sweetness. This is very like fruitcake, heavy like baking spices, some vanilla, some tart cherry. Mm-hmm. It's a long, spicy finish. I like that. So, if I get that one right without ever having tasted it, I'm going to be very proud of myself because I've just been paying attention to what people say about that. And so, yeah, what I thought was malt, I think was really was rye because I'm still getting used to ryes too. So, I might be totally off base on all of this. And I smelled it and I thought it was malt, and then I tasted it. It really tasted like rye. So my nose still has a lot of learning to do. So that's what I'm saying. Try this stuff. Try it with friends. If you're wrong, who cares? You're all drinking whiskey and having a good time together. You know what I mean? This isn't one of those things you need to feel self-conscious about. I don't care. I'll probably be way wrong on all of these. Speaking of which, let's reveal, shall we? Whatever you want to do. Do a drum roll, okay? All right. And the answers are, number one, I thought was a weeder. Let's read on. All right. Number one was KBD. That's Kentucky Bourbon Distillers Kentucky Vintage. Starting off light. Okay. So was not a weeder, but it is a lighter whiskey. I've never had Kentucky Vintage. So I couldn't tell you. I couldn't compare it to what I've had before or anything like that. So that's a first for me. It was nice. It was light. It tasted like a weeder. But that is not. That is a Kentucky Vintage. Very nice. Two. No kidding. Joseph Magnus Cigar Blend. Batch 4. It has an Armagnac finish. Okay. In addition to the regular finishes of sherry and cognac. So that's where I was getting a lot of that sweetness from. Very reminiscent of a Russell's Pick, which have that kind of vanilla sweetness to it. But this was bigger and bolder, just like he said. And 3. Oh, I was right. Okay. It's Westland Distilling single malt whiskey, single cask. So it was a malt. Okay. When I tasted it, it tasted like rye because it was very, very spicy. He says he picked it up from the distillery earlier this year. It's a 5 malt blend, aged for, I believe, 52 months in New American oak with 4 months finish in Muscatel barrels. He said there would be a curveball. Hope you enjoyed at least one of these. I enjoyed all of these. So I was right. That is a malt. Okay. So I wasn't crazy on that. That is malt, but it's a very spicy malt. Most times scotches and things like that, malt whiskeys, they have that smell, but then they're very smooth on the palate. This one was spicy, almost like a high rye bourbon, which is very cool to see. I think my favorite was number 2, which was the cigar blend, which is funny because thought I would have hated the cigar blend. Because in my head I didn't know exactly what how they made it, and so I figured they just kind of, it was, for some reason, in my head I thought smoky, I thought earthy, I would have thought that would have been happening. But no, that is actually, it's very sweet, which would counteract the cigar very well. And that was really, really tasty. Yeah, I think number 2 is my favorite. But number 3, if you have trouble like me with scotches and with malt whiskeys, this might be a nice transition point because it's got that nose, and it's got that taste, but the spice and the kind of the richness, the fullness is much different than a regular scotch, which can be kind of light, fruity, and smooth. This is kind of spicy and bold, and it's very actually. It's very tasty. So, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. I'm sure more samples will be coming your way. You guys want to take part in it? Let me know. I love doing this kind of stuff. This is the best way to expand your palate. If you've got stuff you're excited about, tell me. If you have sampled anything blind that blew your mind, please let me know. As always, like, subscribe, share. Tell me what you want to see on this show. I want to take it on the road. It's hard for me because I carry a lot with me when I'm on the road wrestling. The equipment it would take to do like a full interview show with distilleries and everything is a little tough right now. I'm not ruling it out. But if you guys like the stuff I'm doing here at home, if there's more you want to see, if there's specific whiskeys or brands you want to see, I can do anything from, if you want me to do Jim Beam white label or black label, I can do a review of that if you're curious, if people want to see that. But please, you can email me at wrestlingwithwhiskey@gmail.com. You can comment here, but share, like, subscribe, all the usual nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, taste blind, expand your palate, learn things, have fun. That's what hobbies are for, man. That's what learning and hanging out with things like this are for. It's an art, it's a blast, and you get to drink. Always do so responsibly, but enjoy yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, always keep it smooth, always keep a pour on hand, and always be wrestling with whiskey.